Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Houston again and the December 9th FirstNet Board meeting. Welcome to those of you in the audience and those of you on our live webcast. Yesterday when we had our committee meetings, I talked about how impactful coming to Houston and seeing some of the opportunities to use this FirstNet network has in store for us. And Todd Early and Xinglin will talk about this a little later in the meeting today, but the board and the PSAC actually were able to go out and do a demo and see a demo on all the applications that we're seeing on Band 14 and the applications and how public safety is using Band 14. And not that we needed inspiration to work harder and to move faster, but seeing how this capability changes the way we do public safety, frankly, is inspirational. And what's inspirational is, I was telling Todd early this morning, I said, it's great to see the nice big shiny trucks, and that's really cool, but the really nice thing is to see how the people who are on the street every day, in their cars, and the line officers, dealing with the public every day, and how it impacts their life and how excited they are is truly an inspiration. So Todd, and I know you'll talk later, but I just wanted to mention that at the beginning that this is, it's pretty exciting, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the whole board making themselves available to do that, and also the PSAC, Harlan, having the PSAC, I think, go and see that yesterday was very good as well. Yesterday I talked about, the city of Houston and just the significant things that go on here. First of all, Mayor, beautiful city. Thank you for your hospitality. And, the significance, we were talking with actually some of the public safety folks yesterday about, for example, getting ready for the big events coming up, and just, having that capability for those big events is going to make a huge difference. The Harris County project has been able to, around Texas A&M, there's hundreds of thousands of people there, and the folks who are on Band 14 are actually able to do their work when those big events occur. And the commercial networks can't handle the traffic, and so being able to do that, it just brings it home. So I just wanted to make a comment about just, the significant work that the board is doing. I wanted to thank the board for everything they've done up to this point, and I think we're at frankly, a monumental point in the project. So looking forward to today's meeting and the presentations that we'll have. To start the meeting this morning, we need to take a look at our minutes, but the first thing I think we need to do is probably take roll. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Sue Swenson?
Here.
Jeff Johnson?
Here.
Barry Boniface?
Here.
Ed Horowitz?
Here.
Christopher Burbank?
Here.
James Douglas?
Here.
Kevin McGinnis?
Here.
Anise Parker?
Here.
Neil Cox?
Here.
Ed Reynolds? Richard Stanek?
Here.
Terry Takai?
Here.
Dave Mader? Suzanne Spalding?
Here.
Ron Davis?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, now we can take a look at the minutes. I think the board has before them the minutes from the last meeting in October, and asking if there's any corrections, additions, deletions, modifications to those minutes. And hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Any further discussion? Minutes are approved, and we'll put those in the record, Eli. Thank you. As is our tradition, of course, we need to do a potential conflicts notification, so our board secretary will read our conflicts notification.
In advance of FirstNet's December 2015 committee and board meetings, the management team has provided the board with an agenda outlining each of the items that will be discussed during the committee and the board meeting. The board members were also provided a conflicts of interest assessment, which was produced jointly by the Commerce Department Office of General Counsel and FirstNet Office of Chief Counsel. Providing these documents to the board members allows them to identify potential conflicts of interest, to recuse themselves from participation if required. We have, prior to each committee and the full board meeting, reminded all board members of their obligations relating to conflicts of interest, and asked each of them to identify whether any recusals from deliberations or voting are necessary. With that said, if any board members believe they must now recuse themselves from this meeting, please do so and state for the record. We are prepared to proceed.
Thank you. Just a few comments about today's session. We'll have a couple of presentations, and we'll have guests presenting today and go through a couple of management reports. We'll have a very brief closed session after those presentations, and we'll come back and report out. So that's the order of events for today. To start out, Mayor Parker, I think you have a guest here with us today, so if you'd be so kind as to do that introduction. If not, I have the information. Okay, I'll do the introduction. Chief Mike Montgomery is here today from the Harris County. He's a Harris County Fire Marshal. I assume Mike's here. Oh, there you are. Great, Mike. I didn't know where you were. Come on down. He has 28 years as a first responder responsible for code enforcement, hazardous material response. He's been deployed to the World Trade Center in response to 911 with the Task Force 1, Hurricane Katrina, Rita, and Ike. So obviously, Chief Montgomery has a lot of experience in this area. And Chief, we are delighted to have you here today, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here to represent the greater Houston area and Harris County and the surrounding agencies. At first, let me just say what an important step this is for first responders and how important of an initiative this is across the board. And it's not only going to enhance what we have been able to do in the past, but we've just got some tremendous ideas of how we can better utilize this, not only the technology, but also the interoperability and the capabilities across the board. Just a few points that I would like to make is what is really important to us is if we can capture information, we can share information. And one of the most critical aspects of emergency response is being able to understand what is it that I know that other people need to know, and what is it that they know that I need to know, and how can we better share that information. And obviously, the more information that we can share real time, the better the quality of the decisions we're going to make, and so forth. So this ability to capture not only data, but voice and video and every other aspect of information that we have that's necessary, and to be able to share that across the board, not only locally, but to remote locations as well, to emergency operations centers, to crisis centers, and so forth, is very critical. Second is that by going to an industry standard, and we are able to not only share this information near or real time, but it allows us to enhance our interoperability capabilities. For many years, people thought that interoperability was just the ability to talk with each other on radios and across radio frequencies and radio systems. But interoperability is much, much more than that. It's the ability to share operational practices. It's the able to just basically blend in seamlessly in any incident across the nation, so that we can expand those capabilities of local first responders to enhance those. And those are lessons that we learned during the events of Tropical Storm Allison, Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Ike, Hurricane Sandy, what we also found in the response to the 9/11 attacks and so forth. So this concept of interoperability across industry standards is also very critical. And then the third and the final point is that this technology and this capability is going to allow us to extend our reach far beyond what we can do locally into regional, statewide, and at the national level as well. And to do this, basically be able to share this information real time, the capability is just awesome, and the tremendous impact that's going to make on leaders' ability to make good quality decisions that affect those that we serve. And that's the bottom line, is that this technology and the application of this technology and the ideas that we're already beginning to share are going to help us save lives. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chief.
Any comments from the board members? You know, Chief, I would just like to make a comment. You made a couple of things that really resonated with me, and that is the sharing of information. When we were with the folks yesterday, it was really interesting to hear how organizations that in the past may have not been working together, they're already, because of the technology, thinking, okay, why don't we do this and why don't we do that? I mean, you're already seeing that, aren't you, in some of the work that you're doing?
Yes, ma'am, without a doubt, this idea of sharing information not only across local responders, but to other agency types as well is very critical. And it was very interesting yesterday during the demonstrations to watch the various groups interact and begin to come up with different ways that we could share ideas that we hadn't thought of even before yesterday. So this, as the technology expands, as it evolves, and as it matures, we're going to find out that we're just continually adding new ideas. So to us, this is an evergreen initiative, and it's never going to end. This is just the beginning, and we believe that it is just going to continue on as long as it's available to us.
Absolutely. Any comments from the board, you know, on Chief's comments or your visit yesterday that come to mind? Chief, I'm sure you have something to say.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the chief, and I'm grateful to the public safety community here in Harris County for not only the demonstration they gave us yesterday, but to actually talk to street-level officers and firefighters, hazmat team responders that are using this technology today. They have no motivation to show us a smoke or a mirror. Their motivation was to tell us how this technology and having a dedicated network is changing their operational ability. And I think that's what the chief was speaking to, and it was just nice to see that. And you know, it's not going to be a surprise to you, but Harris County will be leading this country along with the other early adopters of this technology into the future, and we're already seeing operational changes here, and we're going to see more.
Well, thank you, and we agree, absolutely.
Sue, if I could. One of the reasons that we wanted to have this board meeting here was because we are a pilot area and early adopters, but it was a good example of the many overlapping jurisdictions that share space, and we actually built that TransStar facility because we felt that it was so difficult to communicate that we needed to have key personnel in one place in an emergency situation. That's not so necessary anymore, but the amount of data coming in and the ability to share that data very rapidly is the new phase of being in that TransStar facility. But I hope that you really engaged with the Brazos County Sheriff's deputies, because Sue, as you said, having the big hazmat vans and so forth out there, those are cool tools, but these deputies are using this every day and communicating with each other. And I don't know if every board member got to hear that the sheriff can actually key in and see exactly what the deputy's doing while he's in that car.
Some would find that not attractive.
Some would, and we talked to the deputy about that, but in an emergency, and they do have, there's a light that comes on, and they do know when the sheriff's watching, but in an emergency situation, when there's nobody else around and that you may have an electronic tether somehow, on the fire ground, as the chief, as you know, on the fire ground, that's critical. You lose track of one of your people, and it enables you to find them if they're passed out someplace. Well, it works for the police as well. Also, the ability to get feeds from multiple angles from the dash cams. And to the public who may be watching, I was a little disconcerted being in the TransStar facility, which is a joint city, county, state facility, and see a downlink with a 4-alarm fire going on in the city.
And it was live.
Live, yeah. But again, we use it for the port. We use it for, we have the feed from the helicopters. That happened to be a DPS helicopter, but we have a large fleet of city helicopters. The city's command center operates much the same way, but the reason that we have a separate command center is that in an emergency situation, we are using the same type of radio communication, and we need the same type of communication, because who do we send out first after a hurricane? Not the police, it's the public works and solid waste to move debris out of the roads. And so our command center is set up, looks very similar to this one, but it's staffed a bit with the various city departments that need to respond. So you see the complexity and the need for that communication. So I'm glad that everybody went out, and thank you for being here this morning, Chief.
And if I could echo on Mayor Parker's thoughts there, it's not just for first responders. The ability to use this technology every day allows us to extend our reach in both directions, and that is from the street back to a central location, but it's also from that central location back to the street. And as the mayor pointed out, we're able to get many angles now that replace just one set of eyes and ears on the scene. Now we're being able to get information from multiple sources, from multiple angles, and bring those together to help us make better decisions. So very critical information.
Yeah, I'll just make one additional comment. Talking to one of the deputies, in the vehicle, it was interesting and actually when I visited Harris County, actually a couple of years ago, they were already starting to do this, but they said, what's great about this for me personally is that I don't have to keep driving back and forth to the office to do all the paperwork. Essentially, everything from my office is now in my car, and so it allows, they don't have to hassle with the traffic. So personally, it just makes their life a lot better. It makes it more efficient. And if you think about it from a community standpoint, just the presence of the law enforcement in the community versus back at the office has got to be having a very positive impact as well. So again, multiple benefits of all this. And thank you, Chief, for taking the time to be here today, and thank you, Mayor Parker, again, for hosting this. This was a great event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Chief Harlan McEwen. Chief, glad to have you here as usual and giving us an update on the terrific work done by the Public Safety Advisory Group, and so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are many PSAC members in the room. I want to acknowledge that, and of course, we're going to have a meeting this afternoon, but the members that are here, many of them participated in the demo that you mentioned yesterday, and I think almost universally everybody was very impressed. What it is that we saw is the real-world use of Band 14 in a great view of what we believe the future is going to be from the development of this nationwide network. So it was great. Yeah, so we were very impressed. So I'm just going to go through a few updates. First of all, we have a couple of vacancies in the PSAC. One of them was caused by the fact that we hired away one of those members, Mike Worrell, who is now a member of the staff on the fire side of it. So we're really pleased that Mike has joined the staff, but it created a vacancy. So we have that vacancy and one resignation.
Thank you for providing those resources for us to bring on to FirstNet.
We build them up. And then, of course, we're very pleased that Todd Early has been able to join us. He's the new representative of the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators, and of course, Todd's been very much involved. I guess I want to go back to the demo and just say, Todd, to you and your staff, and to Jim and all of the people from Harris County and that put together the demo, you did a wonderful job, and I just wanted to thank you publicly for that. You've heard me report, and I'm not going to go into any detail today, on the 3 tasks that we've been working on for the past year, and we've now completed those tasks, and we've presented our findings to TJ officially for the use of the FirstNet staff on priority and preemption, public safety grade, and user equipment. And those have been very exciting projects. The task teams have been engaged. Here's a list of the various people that were involved. We had a number of volunteers from the PSAC who were engaged in this for almost a year-long task. Every one of them put their all into it. The strength of the PSAC is the fact that we have so many different kinds of backgrounds. These people come from, police, fire, EMS, local government, state government, and various other disciplines, emergency management, and they bring to the table the kind of diverse opinions to give you the best advice that we can give you. So I think that was really very good. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of those recommendations. I think they're on the slides here, but, you know, basically, again, it was to put together the best advice we could give you as you finalize the RFP. One of the things on the public safety grade recommendations I just wanted to mention was that was an interesting task because we started out with a whole long list of what we call critical assets, and finally identified 19. We brought that down to what we feel are the most critical assets, such as fire stations and law enforcement locations, hospitals, major stadiums, arenas, airports, PSAPs, and so on. I think the work that put that together was important. And then secondly, we worked with the staff, tremendous depth in your staff, in the CTO staff and Jeff's staff, developing the ability to identify hazards such as earthquakes and flooding and wildfires and tornadoes and all of those kinds of things, and try to decide, you know, how best to address hardening of the facilities so that we don't have to harden everything, but we are actually especially giving our attention to those things that are most vulnerable. So I think that was very helpful. On the user equipment, again, an interesting mix of people dealing with this. As you know, I mean, we're talking about, we coined a new term. We used to call it the mobile communications units. We coined a term called vehicular network system, and the reason was that the MCU term was being used by FEMA, and we didn't want to have a conflict. We think this is a good term, and of course it deals with various kinds of mobile capability. You know, you all know about the traditional cows, the cellular on wheels, the system on wheels, the light trucks, you know, and all of those kinds of systems. But we're now focusing on the public safety vehicle itself as one of those vehicular network systems, so that particularly where the vehicles are in more rural areas, where they won't have as good a coverage as they might have in other places, they will actually have a system in the police car, in the fire truck, in the ambulance that'll allow them to, and that's been an exciting discussion that we've been going through, along with, you know, the bring your own device discussion, a very important discussion. We envision those kinds of things as being important to the whole outcome of this. We have been requested to do some future tasks. Let me see, I missed one thing here. I wanted to also mention that last week the Executive Committee, under a non-disclosure agreement, reviewed Section M of the new RFP. And of course, we can't discuss the issues, but the issue that I wanted to raise here was the fact that the Executive Committee was extremely pleased with the effort that's gone into this particular part of the RFP. We have extreme confidence in the way this is going, and then we just wanted everybody in the public to know, we wanted the board to know that we think that it's been going really well. And then last, I wanted to just touch on the fact that TJ and Mike and I and others were talking about requested future taskings. And we'll be commencing those, we'll be getting those instructions, TJ, right after the first of the year?
Correct.
And so one of them is local control. Local control is heavily connected to the whole issue of priority and preemption. And, you know, I think just to give people a sense of what we're talking about is that we want the control of the assets of this network to be as automated and to be as dynamic as possible. We really believe that the capability of the technology is such that we'll be able to do that. So that, in other words, people don't have to be pushing buttons and twinking things. In very rare occasions, we'll be discussing how to make use of the technology in a way that will give true local control when it's absolutely necessary. So that's what that's going to be about. Identity, credential, and access management, as you know, we've talked about that. We're going to tackle that now head on, and we've got some good ideas on that already. That's going to be critical to how we manage the users of this network, and we're excited about that task. We're also going to be taking advantage of the newly hired discipline staff, fire people, law enforcement, and EMS, who will be, working directly with those disciplines. What we're going to do is we're going to start to assign various people from the PSAC to working directly in those disciplines. So we're starting to get ourselves organized in a way that will, make it better for us to take advantage of those kinds of capabilities of the people we've hired. And then last, as you know, the law required that, well, first of all, the law provides for, I think it's up to $300 million to go to NIST for research and development. And the law requires that and PSCR has been tasked to do that for NIST. And the law requires that they do that in consultation with the PSAC. And so I wanted you to know that Derek Orr and I and the executive committee were engaged in those discussions, and they're already starting to gear up for the first of the year for a number of tasks related to that. So I think we're headed in a great direction for the first of the year, and I think the PSAC as well, and we appreciate your support.
Well, thank you, Chief. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I'm delighted to hear that you had an opportunity to read an important section in the RFP, and thanks for your feedback on that. I know that was a long time coming to make that happen, so glad to see that it did, and you reviewing that and giving us the confidence that you feel good about it sure makes a big difference. So thank you for taking the time, because I know there's a lot to read there.
Yes.
A lot to read. Just a comment about the public grade, that activity. For me, having been involved in FirstNet since its inception, it's a topic we talked about early on. It was one of these big amorphous kind of topics, and you've actually, I think, boiled it down to make something sensible of that. When we first started talking about it, I remember talking to a couple of the folks at FirstNet, and we said, well, what's the standard for public safety? And they said, well, we really don't have one. So thank you for taking on that big task. And then on the device side, as a person who's been around networks for a while, I always view a device as an extension of the network, and I don't know that people always think about it that way, and it's really, really important. So another important task. These new efforts that you're undertaking, particularly local control, I think is really critically important, and to get the view of the PSAC, because I think initially we thought of it as something else, and now that we're more familiar with what the technology is going to do for us, I think we're in a better position to deal with that. And as you said, we've started work on ICAM, and then I know we have a great relationship with PSCR, and I know that will go well. So great work. Thank you to your executive committee and all of the PSAC for all the work you do. I think we have a very good relationship, and I think we're doing some good work here. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. Any comments from you? Okay, we're going to move on to some administrative responsibilities here. Yesterday, the committees actually took a look at their individual charters, and so I'm going to ask our Chief Counsel, Jason Karp, to bring everybody up to date on the review of the charters, and I think the board needs to actually vote on adopting those changes.
Great. Thanks, Madam Chair, and this won't take long. I do realize this is probably the highlight of everybody's reason for being here today, is talk about board governance, and I appreciate you coming and listening to this topic. As you're aware, there is an annual requirement in our bylaws to review the committee charters to make sure they continue to be in alignment with FirstNet's missions and goals, as well as to provide essentially an annual report and readout of the many activities that the committee's engaged in throughout the year. Yesterday, the committees gave their reports for those who are here, and certainly can see that online. It was a tremendous year, amazing amount of work that this board has done, and so they've taken care of that. We've reviewed the
individual committee charters, made some updates. The good news is there really were no material substantive updates to the charters. They're mostly ministerial, which is good. They're still very much in alignment with our goals and our mission. The committees each individually voted to approve those charters, and now it's just a matter of governance to ensure they're adopted for the next year. We need to turn it over to the full board, Madam Chair, for you to initiate a vote so that the board can discuss and or adopt the charters as they were presented yesterday.
Great. So I think everybody's had ample opportunity to review the charters, and we did that yesterday. So I'm open to a motion to actually approve the charters. Thank you, Ed. Is there a second? Thank you. Mayor Parker, all those in favor of adopting the changes that we discussed yesterday, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Any further discussion? Any abstentions or objections? With that, we have that passed, and we'll put that in the record. Thank you, Jason. I don't think the state of Texas or Harris County needs any further introduction. We've probably done all the introductions, Todd and Ching, on what's happening in Harris County, so we welcome you to present to the full board and to the listening audience and the audience here today what's happening in Harris County and the early builder project there. Welcome, Todd and Ching.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. I want to first of all thank you for the chance to get to speak to you a little bit this morning, and as you can tell, we're very passionate about this early builder project and the work that's going on in the state of Texas, so thank you for that. I want to thank you for everyone for being able to make the demo yesterday, and also thank Chief McEwen and the PSAC members for being able to make that yesterday. We had great interaction, and I think it was great to really put some first responders speaking to you directly and let you see the impact it's had on responders, so thank you for that as well, and thank you for the partnership from first of all, from the board and the FirstNet staff. We feel that these early builder projects are extremely important to being able to put the technology in the hands of the first responders and really get lessons learned and see what works and what doesn't work and provide that feedback. So that engagement and the engagement of the PSAC, is really good to see, and we appreciate that very much. I wanted to take a few minutes this morning to talk to you about really from the state point of contact perspective, the consultation perspective, and the requirements gathering, and then some of the great work. We're very blessed with a great team of folks who have been very innovative and really trying to do some innovative things for outreach to the folks on the ground. And so I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss that. And then Shing Lin from Bruce High's team. Bruce has been a very innovative person in this and really been behind this from day one. And he'll talk to you about the early builder deployment here in Harris County and what it involves. Just a quick history of this. This really started back with the Harris County folks, not the state of Texas, but with the folks in Harris County after the hurricanes in 2008. The state of Texas really got involved in 2010 when we started getting involved in the lease agreement and the spectrum piece of that. The FCC had asked us to get involved from a state perspective, coordination perspective. But they really got involved in that when the roadways looked like this. When you started contraflowing traffic from major hurricane, as you can tell there, the commercial network is going to be extremely inundated. And public safety has to have a network that we can communicate on for our first responders. And when you really dig down into this perspective and this piece of it, you've got an EMS crew right there on the side of the road working on somebody who has to have that network and that reliability for that to happen. So the importance of this, not only in urban areas, but also the rural parts of Texas is extremely important. We got involved and did a lot of paperwork and documents. We received a waiver even ahead of FirstNet in 2011, back when it was the PSST. Then obviously FirstNet was created in 2012, and that process started over, and we worked closely with the board and with the FirstNet staff to establish the lease agreement that's in place. The lease agreement that's in place, we worked very hard with the FirstNet staff on that. In August of 2014, that was signed. And what you see here is the 5 key learning conditions that we agreed to work with the FirstNet staff on and the CTO team. And I want to take a minute to, we've worked very closely with all of the directors in there, but the CTO team has been extremely, worked very close with us. I'm very grateful for Jeff's team and the work that they've done and engaged us very closely in this. These are the things that we'll be documenting and working on. But I think one important key factor there to talk about and discuss is the informal key learning conditions. There's already been informal key learning conditions out of that. I think there'll be more to come, and there's some things that we can do when it comes to local control and ICAM and those things, to really get it in a real live operational system and in the hands of public safety to partner with the CTO team and see what works for public safety and what doesn't. I think those are really the important things that are coming out of these early builder projects that I'm excited about, and I think we'll be able to partner and work on ahead of, when this is rolled out and ahead of state decisions. Just from our perspective, these are some of the challenges that my team have, and I know y'all know this acutely from all across the nation, but having 254 counties and about 250,000 first responders in the state, 1,200 miles international border, these are the challenges we have. As you know, and I think it was discussed, Madam Chair, I think you discussed yesterday about the importance of really reaching the boots on the ground. That's the challenge that we have as well. And so the strategy and some of the innovative things that we've come up with, we're excited about, and I think that's the importance of some of the grant money that NTIA and others have put out there of being able to leverage that. And some of the things that we've done have actually, other states can utilize and leverage as well. But really getting into these folks and educating them and letting them know what this is, what it isn't, the innovative things and technology that's going to provide our first responders is one of the things that's important to us and a challenge that we have to be able to do that. One of the things that we've been working very hard on is trying to come up and figure out a way to have the optimum network design, to really have the involvement, an interactive and iterative process with all the local first responders to allow them the chance to give us data and input and requirements so that we can make sure that that's included in the state plan that Rich and his team give the state so that it's a success. And we've been trying to do that, and one of the ways we did that was for the first initial data set, we utilized the mobile data survey tool that was developed by OEC, and we rolled that piece of it out. So that was really talking about capacity and how much and devices and the things that FirstNet asked for in the first phase of the data collection. Obviously, we're still continuing data collection, and that'll be an iterative process to make sure that that's included in the state plan that's delivered. We had a great response. Very proud of the team, did a great job and received over 1,100. I believe we're almost up to 1,200 responses to that survey from public safety now. And so that was a great response, and they did a great job. And we submitted that data to FirstNet at the end of September. One of the ways we did that through the mobile data survey tool was the team created an online learning tutorial that talked about the importance of gathering the data and walked them through all the steps of why it's needed, why FirstNet needs it, and rolled that out to all the jurisdictions. They also did a large telephone campaign. They called entities and told them the importance and physically walked them through doing that, and I think that's why they got the great response that they received. The next thing we're working on now is obviously coverage, really, and I'll go through that here in just a minute, but knowing where folks need coverage, the important things to them, because what's important in West Texas, is different in East Texas, and the importance of the coverage that's out there and what needs to be covered. As I said, we did it in two phases, the first phase really being the data. Now we're focused on the coverage objective mapping, and we've created a tool and leveraged some other tools that were out there, added to it a little bit, and we'll be rolling that out sometime toward the end of this month to jurisdictions across the state. We actually have created a video to roll out the importance of that and also take them step by step through the interactive mapping process. This is just a map of some data that we received for first responders all over the state. But the coverage planning mapping tool really is what you see here, and what we did was take the baseline coverage objective map that FirstNet and the state plans team gave to us. We went in and added 911 call data from all over the state of Texas. We feel that's very important to have that call data. We still have some to add, but as you can see there's a lot of 911 calls that happen, so having the coverage for where the first responders go on those 911 calls is extremely important. Hurricane evacuation routes, extremely important. We added those hurricane evacuation routes to that. We'll be also looking at adding some TEA data for coverage at schools because they have resource officers and they have the needs there when those schools go on lockdown, and to have that data. This is just a kind of a picture of the interactive tool that's been created, but what this will allow us to do is roll this out to the regions and to the first responders and allow them to go in and mark coverage of the important places that they need coverage so that we can provide that back to FirstNet and the state plans team to be able to do that. We know that we have to try to reach some type of phased rollout that's consistent with what FirstNet will be rolling out in the 5 phases. So the importance of doing that, we have to have the ability for first responders to give us that data and that input, but also allow us to look at the attributes and the things that are important to those local counties. And so what one of our working groups came up with, you see here, is a tool to really input data to help us with that phased rollout so that they can go in there and put all the attributes that are important to their local area. It may be the oil industry. It may be, it may be the port right here. It may be various things across the state. And this allows them to go in and put in those important attributes and data that's readily available, and then weight that data to come up with a consistent phased rollout across the state. This way they have local input, we cover the things that's very important to them, and then we're able to provide that to Rich and the team for the state plan that's delivered. So we're extremely excited about this. They're still working on it, but we feel that that's going to give us some output from the state and the local planning perspective to really have the input into the state plan. These are just some of the strategic advisory groups that we have working across the state, some various committees that we have giving us input from the local perspective, from the first responder, we know it's the NG 911 is going to converge with this network, so having that involvement now, figuring out how that's going to work. We have some folks around the state who are already doing text to 911, and so having that input and when they need it and the involvement. Education, very important to the administration for education to be covered in this. So what are the use cases in K-12 and in colleges and the things that we can utilize this network for? Rural deployment is extremely important. As I discussed yesterday, last Thursday we had an explosion at a gas plant in West Texas. A population in that area of 2 people. 300 people in that, thank God they all got out safely and no one was severely injured, but the importance of rural deployment is extremely important in a state that has 85% rural area. Tribal, we're very engaged with our 3 tribal nations here and with the FirstNet team and that engagement. VOAD and private sector, I want to talk real quickly about that. Extremely important to us with our volunteer organizations when it comes to disaster response. And then our private sector, who's extremely involved with us when it comes to disaster response and helping us get water to pods and other things that are out there. And then state agency involvement. One of the things that I want to spend just a minute on is really a couple of the innovative things that the team has done to really get outreach out to the boots on the ground. We have the same challenge. You walk up to the folks on the ground and they still don't know what this is. With over 250,000 responders, that's really important to us. So they come up with an e-learning portal. And this e-learning portal that you're about to see, one of the ways that we're able to get folks to it is we worked with the credentialing agencies across the state, and first responders who require CE credits will get 2 CE credits for going through this presentation and this involvement in this e-learning portal to help them. So that's kind of a carrot, if you say, to really get them involved in that. And this e-learning portal walks you through many facets and assets of what is public safety broadband. It really starts at the basic level of what is public safety broadband, what is FirstNet, how is it going to affect their discipline, all the way to the fact of applications. What applications do you see in fire and EMS and in law enforcement? It talks about some disaster response that we've had across the state. You heard the chief earlier talk about some of the hurricane responses, but really, what did communications look like before, during, and after that disaster, and what were some of the challenges, and how would this technology really improve the response of that disaster and that piece of it? It compares some of this to the commercial industry today, what the challenges are, what's in commercial, what would FirstNet be. And then one of the things that we're really excited about it is when we talk about this technology and this network, we talk about the innovation. We talk a lot about requirements of the network, but we really want to get their mind thinking about, what type of innovative solutions would this provide? We talk a lot about the West Fire, where we lost 15 first responders in that incident. We talk a lot about the Bastrop Wildfire Complex, where we lost over 1,500 homes. And really, if you think about those incidents and you talk about after-action reports, what's always the #1 issue that comes out of that, right? It's communications. And really, when you dig into it, folks most of the time have the ability to communicate. They either don't have the plan on what channels they're supposed to be on, or they don't have the data ahead of getting there to staging before they get to that incident. So we created a scenario, the team did, that talks about a bridge collapse. And when you think about that, you could actually geofence an area of an incident, whether it's 50 miles, 75 miles, whatever it be. And when you're responding in that area, it has this device that says, are you responding to this bridge collapse? And you hit yes. once you do that, the ability to push out applications to that device ahead of them ever getting there. So now when they go, they have a complete situational awareness of that emergency disaster and that response. All the way for a unified awareness of who is staged where, what entity they're from, what's their contact information. You see here just an example of fire and EMS where you would be able to stage those and where they're at. Medical maps so that you know where the hospitals are, the burn centers, the triage areas, where your EMS folks are staged, all the way to fire evacuations, mandatory and voluntary evacuations. When you do evacuations, we have many that can't evacuate themselves in the state of Texas. And we have to send folks down in there, and right now it's really by LMR radio and a map being able to do that. So having an application where you can check off what you've hit, what else you have to go evacuate, and what's being done, and the other folks that are there, we feel is extremely important. And then down into the ICS forms that the incident commander actually uses on that incident scene, and then the communications plan, knowing what channel to communicate. So now before the first responder ever gets there, they have a unified situational awareness. They know where to stage. They know where to stage their equipment. They know how to communicate. They know all the important information that previously we had to wait for the information when they got on the scene. That's the type of innovation and technology that we think this network will provide, and so I'm really proud of the team and some of the innovative things that they've done, but it walks folks through this to kind of get their mind, to start thinking around that piece of it. The team also created this website, txlte.com. It has all kinds of information about public safety broadband, FirstNet. It also allows them to go and take this online learning portal. So a couple of things we're working on now is just some of the deployment planning. Some of the planned events. The next big one here is the Houston Rodeo. You heard the mayor talk about it yesterday. That's a big one as well. And then the Super Bowl, obviously, next year, and some of the events that are going on in the Austin area as well. Just a couple of key points, and I'll end this and turn it over to Shing. Just one thing that I want to make sure that the board is aware of. We have many jurisdictions. It's not just here in the state of Texas, but many jurisdictions all over the nation that can't afford to buy devices or pay for the monthly service, specifically the volunteer fire units. We have thousands of volunteer fire departments in the state who literally have pancake suppers and spaghetti suppers to buy mobile radios and portable radios. So somehow the importance of being able to subsidize that, whether it's through grants or what we can do, I think it's one thing we have to keep in mind as we roll this out for adoption. Border coverage is critical. We got the chance to show you yesterday some of the operations we're doing along the border, and having the technology to put in the hands of first responders is extremely important and critical to the operations. Broadband coverage to schools is a very important point to the administration, and that is to be able to get broadband coverage to those schools, specifically also to the resource officers who are there when a school is on lockdown because of a bomb threat or a SWAT team going through a school district is extremely important to us as well. I talked about rural deployment. That's very critical to us as well, with 85% of the state that is rural. And then the last thing is leveraging existing infrastructure. Harris County's done a great job. They've spent a lot of grant money to put that infrastructure in. And then you see a difference here from the other BTOP or for the other early builders as well. Is Harris County Commissioners Court has invested $5.8 million that Shing will talk about of local money into the further deployment of this network. So it shows you the partnership and the importance to them. So leveraging what's already out there we feel is extremely important, and we hope will be considered as well. All right, I'll turn it over to Shing Lin.
Go ahead.
When you talk about border coverage, I mean, often it's just literally a line in the sand or maybe a fence or something else. Are you talking about being able to communicate across the border with law enforcement or military on the other side of the border as well?
Yes, sir. I'm talking actually about both. So the first one being on the U.S. side for providing actually just coverage. There's certain areas down there that the commercial providers don't have coverage, that our folks need that technology and that coverage for the operations that are going on. But also for cross-border communications. We actually just had OEC down a few months ago to talk about cross-border communications and the need. As we have folks in the air who are following or in operations, the ability to communicate on the other side is extremely important, and that notification. And today it's done through CBP, but we need that direct, not only voice communication, but also data communication as needed and when needed, also across the border for response.
And so state, or a decision made by FirstNet, or?
Push the button, Chair.
But it does, it says it doesn't work. You let me speak louder? I can do that. No, you're fine. Okay, perfect. Did you hear my question? Yes. Okay.
The cross-border issues are something actually that we're actually not only working in Texas, but it's one of the things that we're actually also looking at in New Mexico. And that was one of the focus areas, because that is obviously critical. We have, I think, it's a little more challenging, I think, with our colleagues on the other side of the border on the south side than it is on the north side. So I think that's one of the things, and I'm not as current on the New Mexico project, but that was one of the key things because we knew it was a big, big issue. So it's definitely on our radar, and it's something that we're paying attention to. So, but, it's, we haven't solved it yet, but Jackie Miller is here in the audience, and she's now one of our regional people, so we can certainly talk with Jackie afterwards and see if there's any progress there.
Thank you.
And Sheriff, there's also some work been done by OEC with some existing network into those locations. And I would say also, I believe the FCC and the State Department are doing negotiations on plans and the ability to communicate across the border as well. And those have been ongoing as well.
Thank you, everybody. Before I get started, I want to thank everybody for coming. We're very proud and happy to be participating in FirstNet, this build-out project. And over the last 12, 18 months, we've invested heavily in talent, bringing people in to help make sure this is a success. And hopefully yesterday's demonstration is showing what we can do with this network going forward. I'd like to spend a few minutes this morning to share with everybody the progress on the network, where we're headed, the strategy of the build-out, and what we think the time frame might be for our project to get to a point where we could be operational. And by operational, I mean, we are providing sufficient coverage where the first responder community will trust that the network will be there for them and will be willing to come on board full-time. So just a quick project summary. We are one of the first 5 builders, but one of the main difference between us and the other builders is that we were not an original BTOP project. Our project was originally funded through port security grants, and so the initial phase of the build-out, of course, focused heavily on the ship channel. As Todd said earlier this year, Commissioners Court and the judge found that this project is important enough to move forward and elected to provide us additional funding to finish out what we're calling the first phase build out of the project, which I'll get into a little bit more in a little bit. So as a quick reminder, the project, the SMLA consists of, for the county, the Harris County service area, the mobile unit that was out on display yesterday at the demo, and as well as the one site out in Brazos County. And the intent on that site is to really help test out extended range capability. The one interesting thing to point out is, everybody had conversations yesterday with the Brazos County Sheriff's Department. And the interesting thing is that site is not fully in our extended range test mode yet. And so to see the difference that it's making operationally, when we're not even fully complete down there is quite exciting. So, the current status, and a quick discussion, there are 18 sites that are actually up operational inside the county at the moment. One of the sites was at, it's right over there at the TransStar location, right behind the demo area. We have that one site in Brazos County, and of course the mobile unit is up and running. The moving forward strategy is that we would like to provide mobile coverage first, right? So similar to terminology in the radio world, mobile meaning vehicle coverage. We feel like this reflects the industry in terms of devices, in terms of UE at this moment, and this is a very important part of this. The vehicles out in the field have become such computing forces that they need the connectivity. So moving forward, our phase 1 will be data. We will do the mobile coverage. In this phase, originally, if you guys recall some of the original conversations, we were talking about 33 sites. But we've decided that we really need to up that count to provide better coverage. So we're hoping to finish 37 sites in phase 1. We are funded, the $5.8 million is funding the completion of this phase, so we'll be able to finish the project here. The portable coverage will follow. I think the growth of the portable coverage will come naturally. First will be locations where, even the mobile coverage may have some weaknesses, and we'll fill those in. And then as the portable devices come in, we'll start to recognize the usage pattern where things are going to be used, and that'll naturally fill in. And then we are actively researching and looking at a VoLTE strategy on how to provide voice communications and stressing that it's non-mission critical voice. So this map conveys the current coverage that we have in the county. Again, heavily focused initially on the port side of things. One of the things we did do was we covered on the southeast corner of town, that's Interstate 45, and it's a major evacuation route for hurricanes. So one of the things we made sure we try to do is go ahead and cover that up as our strategy builds. So the phase 1 build out will provide as a coverage of roughly, it's a little less than the 1,800 square miles that's in the county. I do want to point out that this is a bit of an older coverage map. This map represents 33 sites. Our strategy of moving to 37 sites has a lot to do with where you currently see some gaps within the county. So the intent is the gaps that you see on the northern part of the county will be covered as part of phase 1. So as you're looking at this coverage map, you're probably thinking to yourself, this looks pretty good with 37 sites. Why do we need to build out the additional 60-plus sites? Looking at the same part of county, looking at the same sites, as you start to model and evaluate mobile coverage versus portable coverage, you start to see the gap that will develop. So the 60 additional sites will be there to not just fill in the gaps, but also provide better in-building coverage. So this is roughly what the county will look like once we put all the sites in. Now, I want to emphasize, so Jim won't hurt me when we leave here, but this is a proposed coverage. The evaluation of the site, as everybody knows, it's a constant exercise. We're always looking for better coverage, so our end users will have a better experience. So what's next? What are we focused on today? Having a network is one thing, but being able to provide support is another. When somebody calls us at 3 in the morning saying, hey, I have connectivity issues, I have to be able to support them. Of course, there's the business aspect of this. There's the whole revenue aspect, so billing support's important. So we're spending a lot of time and effort right now focused around the customer support, customer experience process. Building out those processes, putting in place systems, and folks that can answer calls when they come in. Of course, we're continuing the build out. We are continuously evaluating where to put sites, working with our partners locally, different jurisdictions, including the city, who has been a big part of enabling this to make this a success. The goal for phase 1 completion at this time is to try to get those 37 sites up on air by the end of the summer of 2016. So at that time, what we are hoping to be able to do is to have countywide coverage and really initially try to test everything out so that we can ensure that the big event coming in 2017 will have sufficient support and we would have vetted the network completely. We continue to work with Todd and the state team on communication and outreach. That is such an important aspect of this. As Todd mentioned earlier, there's a lot of boots on the ground that still don't quite have a good feel for what this network will do for them. And so we continue to work with them to make sure they understand that this is a network for them. This isn't a network for, those of us that are building it or anything like that. This is to enable them to keep them safe and to allow them to do their jobs more efficiently. So that's very important. And then the last bit, of course, is we have great partnerships with all the agencies around here, but we got to have our legal documentation and things in place. So all the interlocal agreements are a constant discussion and things that we're continuing to work on. So that's our goal, that's our plan, and we hope that by summer of 2016, the conversation we'll be having is, hey, the county's covered. We would have covered the fourth largest city and the third largest county in the country. And I think that's going to be a real exciting moment when the network's complete. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the portable coverage.
Yes.
So, knowing the statutory schema today, what changes are there that you would see that would be helpful in either the building code or whatever that would help us within building coverage? Because every time you don't have some type of device in a building, we've got to build a tower to achieve that. So are there things that you're seeing that will be helpful for us to put our eyes on?
In looking at what the manufacturers and the vendors are doing out there, I think it is actually a topic that they're aware of. And there are very innovative products that we're seeing that are coming up to try to help address the in-building coverage challenge. I think as schools are a great example where RFs and new schools that are being built are just incompatible, seemingly. And I think there are a lot of interesting products and solutions that vendors are coming up that will enable the coverage. I think they're looking for ways to design less expensive and much more portable E-Node Bs that you can deploy quickly. And I think that will be a dramatic help. And I know there are discussions for high-powered UEs. I think that too will also help. What we're seeing is that usually it isn't the network that's having the issue, it's the devices being lower powered can't actually get out of the building. So those are the type of things that we're seeing that I think will help.
I just have, oh, Todd, go ahead.
I just want to say, Chief, in response to that also, one of the things that we've had discussions with the outreach and the consultation staff is the ability for, in the 5 phases of deployment, we know we're going to have folks who are going to want to provide resources and money to extend that coverage, whether it's inside a hospital with a distributed antenna system, whatever it may be. So how do we accommodate the folks who want to spend some local money to extend that coverage within those 5 phases? How's that done? What's the policy of it? We think it's important to consider because we think we're going to have folks who will come out and want to extend that coverage, and which benefits FirstNet as well with the funding side of that. So how is that done? Those are some of the discussions we've had with the staff as well.
If I might. Thank you. I think, as you look at DASs or other tools, right, I think, as we shift from, how do we design a network for public safety and how do we procure it, how do we seek a partner, next phase we're going to move into is, what other actions and steps can we do to help this network be more effective at the street level? So, I think we have to broaden our view a little bit and look at things such as the building code and whatnot. I think at the business end, people are less likely to rent a building where their cell phone doesn't work, and people are less likely to shop in a mall where their cell phone doesn't work. So I think there's already starting to be a market drive for it. But I would like to glimpse into your experience at some point subsequent to today and say, what can we learn about best practices that we may be able to use our energy and resources to help advance more DASs or more fill in the blank, but to reduce the amount of in-building coverage gaps. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Just a question, Ching. You mentioned, well, actually a comment and then a question. I really appreciate you mentioning customer experience and customer support, because I think everybody's been maniacally and appropriately so focused on building the network. So I appreciate that. But I think sometimes people forget that once the network is built, we have people out there we need to support. So as we think about FirstNet, we need to think about it in its entirety from end to end. So, you know, the experiences that you're having there, I think, will be quite useful to us. And that's something that I think about a lot. So I just wanted to highlight that for anybody who's listening, that there's more to it than just building the network. On the interagency, or you called them interlocal, and I'm thinking of interagency agreements, and it kind of is on the same theme as Chief Johnson is. And I know New Mexico is working on this with some of the federal agencies. It seems like it just takes a long, long, long time to get those agreements done. So I would just like any comments you have about, is there an opportunity for us, should we be looking at how to streamline some of those processes? Because if we're going to, Todd, to your point, use existing infrastructure, there's a lot of different people to have those conversations with. So any insight you have on that would be helpful.
I think the continued outreach and education of what the network is will be tremendously helpful. I think we are very lucky that our local jurisdictions are very willing to step in and help, and especially once they're aware of what we are trying to accomplish, what the FirstNet network is trying to accomplish, that tends to accelerate the discussions and the partnership. So I think if there's one thing that FirstNet can help, and you guys are all doing this, including the team in the state, is that outreach.
Just continue that
Continue
effort
that outreach, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any of the board have any other questions or comments for our folks? Todd and Ching, thank you very, very much, and thanks to your entire team. I look forward to, Todd, you know, we talked yesterday about maybe making another visit and riding in one of those machine gun boats. So I look forward to making that arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heaven help us.
It gives you a real appreciation for what public safety really is when you see, you know, these, you know, the challenges that public safety has along the border. And, you know, I'm sure they'll take us to a safe zone when they take us out in that boat. But it makes you appreciate that, you know, just the life that our public safety folks and our, you know, just putting their life on the line every single day to protect us. So very interesting. So, Mr. Poth, I think you are up to give us a CEO update for FirstNet.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks everyone for coming and everyone out in Webland. It's a great opportunity to speak again to the board and to the public safety community of what FirstNet's been working on and what we're trying to accomplish. But this is just the start of a long, you know, celebratory, hopefully, trail to where we can have some success for years to come on behalf of the public safety. So I wanted to provide, you know, we spent a lot of time, certainly in the last 6 months, certainly in the last 2 years, focused on the plan, on what is the proposal, what is the need, the business, the money, the evaluation criteria, the objectives, and we all get wrapped around that focus. But I think it's at this point, with the contemplated milestone that the board may consider today, that to maybe take a pause and kind of remember what brought us here. And I think it's important. Everyone remembers out of the 9/11 Commission report the need for a national public network. This was pushed, you know, and lobbied extensively by public safety for years and years to make it come to fruition. And, you know, the course for a nationwide network, you know, resoundingly, it resulted in the legislation being passed. And many of the people in this room are in this picture. Thanks to your leadership and your hard work, this actually came into reality. And I certainly, every day that I go to work, and I know the FirstNet team goes to work, that's kind of the undercurrent of everything that we're doing. That's our focus. Although we're very focused on making sure that this is an excellent public-private partnership, we're also focused on what really brought us here, you know, to serve the end customers, the public safety. Every day, all of you seen and heard the needs for this type of network, and it's never more apparent. So we never lose sight of that mission, and you know, it's a joy to work with the team that we have in place. One of the things that we're focused on is the ongoing consultation. I appreciate Harris County and everyone continuing to echo that, that need and that reinforcement. We're not going to stop. It doesn't stop with the issuance of an RFP or with the issuance or with the initial data collection. That's just the beginning. You know, consultation is what has helped us bring this RFP together. We're focused on the design of the network. We hope to accomplish that today. The board is going to contemplate that later in this session. And the consultation is key. It's informed in everything we do. One of the keys that, you know, we understand, and it's as we get closer and closer to this becoming an eventuality, the states are getting anxious. We're getting anxious, and we understand that. But we all have to remind ourselves the statute does set up a process of how we're going to go about. And we're going as fast as it practically makes to get a proposal, select a partner, get state plans out so that the states can make informed decisions as what's in the best interest of their ultimate end customers, the public safety community. So we're asking for your patience. We're coming, you know, just hang tight. I know everyone's getting anxious. We're starting to hear a lot of states, well, we've got to get going now. And we feel that urgency, and the board reminds myself and my team, you know, if not on an hourly basis, sometimes more frequent with Chief Johnson that, you know, that was interesting, but what about now? What are we doing now? As everyone probably knows, the RFP that we're contemplating is a result of 2 years of that effort. The inputs from the consultation, from the states, tribal, federal, all the data collection, the public notices that were put out. We really put out requests for the information. We've got opinions. We got recommendations. We even, dare I say, criticisms as to what's the best way to put this offer together so that we can get the best solution to achieve the mission for public safety. And then with the extensive vendor outreach, trying to make sure that the vendors that are contemplating participating in this understand that this is a public-private partnership and that FirstNet is a key component to that. And as Madam Chair just spoke, FirstNet was not born just to issue an RFP and then we're done and have the awardee go about and enable this mission. FirstNet is going to be here for the long duration and the long haul. So with that, what I'd like to ask is if my leadership team can come up there and line up behind me. They're begrudgingly coming up slowly. Anyone? Anyone? So as we think about 2016, you know, the RFP is a key milestone, but it doesn't define what our organization in the breadth. As I said from the start, this is public safety's network, and we are just merely the stewards of that. And it's important to industry and public safeties that as stewards, we're a no-risk organization. So to that end, over the last 90 days, I've had the opportunity since being appointed as the CEO to go through over 200 candidates and applicants for all the various positions. FirstNet and the message is there is no more acting. I have gone through painstaking measures and interviewed a lot of people, and with great pleasure to announce that this is the leadership team for FirstNet going forward. President Kennedy, which I love, we have our own President Kennedy, right? Yeah. And then Frank, starting from, I don't know if, let's see, somebody's right to left. Frank Freeman is our Chief Administrative Officer. President Kennedy, which is a tough act to follow, but our Chief Counsel is Jason Karp. Then we, as Barry noted, Jeff Bratcher has willingly taken on the torch for as the Chief Technology Officer. And then Kim Farrington is our Chief Financial Officer. And then Jim Gwynn is our Chief Information Officer. And our latest addition, which I'm very excited to also announce, is David Dasher, who is our Chief Procurement Officer. So this is the team that's going to work with the FirstNet board, with the FirstNet community, and with the partners to make this a reality. So I'm very excited that we have them. We, our FirstNet team, our employees and our contractors that this team leads, I would challenge any organization or any agency to a tug of war, because I think my team can beat anyone. And this is the reason, because of the leadership of these people. So if I may indulge a round of applause for this team. I said I'm going to make them just stand up there awkwardly. they're going to be here for the next hour, not moving. Thank you, guys. One of the keys is that FirstNet, in our partnership with the Department of Commerce, NTIA, and the Department of Interior, who's assisting us in the acquisition, our team works with them on a daily basis to make sure that the offering that's being contemplated is the best possible solution that's going to meet all of the needs. So we're very excited. This is a busy year ahead, and here's just some of the milestones. So if I ask the board's indulgence, I will walk you through each of these for the next 2 hours. To just let you know that this is, you know, a lot of activities that are going on to continue to make the FirstNet and this network a reality, hopefully in the very near future. So I thank you all for your time. Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's a delight to have you as our CEO and to have the actual leadership team in place. And I mean, these folks have been around for a while, but it's nice to have them be in their normal, regular positions, and we have the team intact to do what we need to go forward. You know, I think it's important to note that that milestone map that we showed you, while there's a lot of activity on that, that milestone map was actually developed, gosh, now a year and a half ago. And we have been on plan, on budget, on target, you know, throughout that strategic roadmap. And today is no different. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to go into closed session, and we expect that to take no more than an hour. We may be faster than that. We had a very good session yesterday in our closed session. So we'll come back and actually read out the report from our closed session. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the session. Thank you. Neil, is there a second? Thank you, Terry. There's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Any objections, abstentions? We are in closed session for the next hour at most. Thank you.